Hello everyone, my name is Eugene. This is M&M WOD, Mobility and Mindfulness Work of the Day, and so we're going to be talking about routines. So let me just talk about what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to go over the what, who, why, how, and when of routines. We're going to go point by point, and so you can follow along with me. So what are routines? Routines are things that we do on a daily or regular basis. Generally daily. You don't want to think of a routine as something you do once a week. That's a little bit too infrequent. You want to be something just about every day, maybe every other day, but very frequently. And these can be actions or they can be thoughts. It can be a thought pattern. It can be just mindfulness work where you're not really doing a whole lot physically, but you're in terms of what you're thinking about, what your brain is doing, what your mind is thinking about. There's a lot going on. And the reason why routines are, what routines do is they reduce this decision fatigue or decision burden. If you consider how many decisions you make in a day, you want to reduce that number. So if you're like me, if let's say for breakfast, you're trying to figure out, am I gonna have eggs? Am I gonna have eggs with bacon? Am I gonna have cereal? Am I gonna have coffee with that? What about juice? Those are all sorts of decisions that you make, and if you make a lot of decisions before you're even out the door after breakfast, that's a lot of decisions that you won't necessarily make great decisions later in the day. So it's about understanding the decision fatigue and decision burden that those decisions add up after a while. And so if you have a lot of routines built in, things that sort of become, you don't really think about while you do them. You just kind of like, all right, it's time for this routine to start, time for this habit to start. You can sort of remove decisions out of there. So it's just a process that you sort of inhabit and embody for a little while. And you don't necessarily think about a whole lot. And I like to make this delineation between habits and routines. I consider a routine something that you do mindfully, that you do intentionally, that you put a lot of thought behind initially, but not why you do it necessarily. And habits are something that you sort of do mindlessly, that you sort of, they're more of a distraction rather than an embodiment. So a routine is something that there's a reason why you do it. You do so with intention. At least there's a reason why you do this. And the habit is something that you sort of kind of like fiddle around with. So some examples of this. A habit is looking at your phone while you eat. A habit is also playing with your hair when you get nervous, sort of those kind of tics. And a routine is, let's say, brewing coffee in the morning, doing like a French press maybe. Maybe it is a mindfulness practice. These kind of that difference between what do you do intentionally and what do you do unintentionally. That sort of habit routine. Ooh, some sirens going around. Who are routines for, or who has routines? Everybody has routines, whether you sort of realize it or not. And I like to think about this in terms of like an anthropologist. So if you're going to study a human, if you're going to study yourself, like Jane Goodall looking at primates and apes and gorillas and stuff, you sort of want to think of it as an anthropologist. What are they doing in like a GoPro, like fly on the wall sort of thing. So if you were to watch, if you were to have a GoPro follow you around and it's in a drone, it's just kind of behind you, watching you all day long. What is it going to pick up? What are going to be those things that you're like, oh, they do that a lot. I wonder why they do that a lot. And some of it might be cultural. So if you're Muslim, if you pray regularly, that is going to be a routine that you notice, that you're like, oh, every couple hours they do this prayer thing. I wonder what that's about. Or if for a lot of people, maybe eating at meals when they're with friends, you look at your phone and you scroll. Or maybe every day you go through Instagram, while you're on the toilet, that kind of stuff. So in terms of like the physical, like what are you doing with your body, and what can be seen by others? That's sort of what the GoPro drone is. And the other sort of third party perspective is an inner monologue transcript. So I like to think of routines not necessarily just in what you do, but what you think about. What is that brain train doing? And if you were to print out the transcript of your inner monologue, how surprised would you be about those repeating thought patterns that you have? And they don't necessarily need to be good, they don't necessarily need to be bad, but they are worth noting. And so maybe it's a really, maybe it's catching yourself when you're angry. Maybe it's catching yourself when you could be having road rage. That could be a very mindful routine, mental inner monologue routine. Or having that road rage and just screaming, giving the fingers to somebody on the road. Maybe it is, right before you go to bed, you just start thinking about all the failures you had, and that one time in middle school when you said something stupid in front of that person you liked, that kind of stuff. Those are also routines. Those are also habits. And they're really worth noting, not just necessarily physically what you're doing, but also internally, mentally, in that monologue that's running through your head. What's happening in there? And why? Why do we care about routines? Because they're an objective look at yourself. So maybe, so let's think of it this way. If you're a writer, but let's say I call myself a writer, but how often do I write? If I write every day, if I sit my butt down in front of my computer or a typewriter, whatever, with pen and paper, whatever, if I write every single day, I look at myself and look at those habits that I have, I can objectively feel comfortable saying that I'm a writer. Same if I lace up my shoes and I go on like a mile run. Maybe it's not very far, maybe it's not like Ironman distance, maybe it's not ultra marathon, but every day I'm running, I'd call myself a runner. But if you write once a week, if you write once a month, if you spend more time looking and avoiding the typewriter than you do sitting at that typewriter, can you really call yourself a writer? And that's sort of that objective look. Like when you look at your habits, what does that make you? And you don't have to identify yourself with these things, but it's important and it's very powerful to sort of think of yourself as like what do these habits and what do these routines build me into? And that's this next one, a sum of habits and routines. And that sort of is a really good indication of where you're going to be in the future. So for that writer that writes once a week or maybe once a month, where is that habit going to lead them? Is that going to lead them into the future of a writer? If you write every single day, maybe you don't even write very good stuff, but you write every single day, where is that going to lead you? That's going to lead you into a future of a writer. And while these labels aren't necessarily very important for success, it can be helpful to internalize it that way. Like you're turning yourself into something else just by the act of doing it. You're not necessarily a writer before you start writing. You become a writer as you write. And how do we build these routines? Generally people think of it, we build good routines. We build positive routines. We intentionally plan and we intentionally design our routines so that we can be successful in them and that they are awesome. And by building these good routines, we can crowd out negative routines. We don't necessarily I don't want to actively think about being not mindful as I drive. I want to just build mindful habits as I drive. And you don't want to try to actively negate something. You want to just think about the positive and have those positives crowd out and push away all the negative habits, all the negative thought processes that you might have. And but one thing, rather than crowding you don't want to crowd out, you don't want to intentionally negate those negative habits, but you also want to you want to have a lot of forgiveness for yourself when you do have those bad habits. When you do catch yourself doing these bad things, you want to forgive yourself. You don't want to be like, oh, Eugene, you're so stupid. Stop it. Don't do that. No, it's just chill, relax. Be like, okay, I caught myself doing that bad thing. I'm just not going to do it anymore. Done. That's it. So that forgiveness of self. And when do we want to do these routines? There are sort of three different broad categories of times when you can do a routine. Morning or first thing in the morning, evening or the last thing you do during the day right before you go to bed, and then the last category is during the day whenever you can fit it in. And this is written in sort of preference, because in the morning, first thing in the morning, you're still your brain is turning on. Those really negative parts of yourself hopefully haven't quite turned on yet. So first thing in the morning, you have the most willpower. You have the most amount of decision power and the least amount of decision fatigue. So this is a really great way to sort of flush out whatever weird dreams you might have been having last night, and setting the tone for the rest of the day. So it's just like, boom, gonna start doing really cool stuff, starting on some really cool habits, let's do this thing. And that's the ideal time. Some people might have certain reasons why they can't do stuff in the morning, so that's why an evening routine right before bed, sort of synthesizing the day. This is really powerful, because you can really prepare your body, prepare your mind to go to bed, and to really get some deep restful sleep, rather than sort of having that weird tossing and turning. If you ritualize sleep, or ritualize that like hour, 2 hours before bed, you can really allow yourself to drop into sleep. But the problem with this, not necessarily a problem, a pitfall, is that you have at that right before bed, you have the most amount of decision fatigue, you have the least amount of care, you're more like, oh, I just want to go to bed. And this happens with me all the time. I'm like, oh, do I really want to go through my evening routine? Is this really something that I want to do? And I have to fight, I have to like argue with myself to be like, Eugene, you got to do this, this is what you do every night, so just do it, don't fight it, just let it happen. That kind of resistance, that friction, can be a little bit tough to overcome, especially in that evening routine. But during the day, sort of fitting in routines whenever you can, that's sort of the toughest, because it's very easy to just sort of fall into that river of the day, where you just kind of like, first thing in the morning, you just jump into that river of the day, it kind of carries you, and then you pop out right at the end of that 8-hour shift, and you're like, oh, what just happened? And then you go to bed. It's very difficult to find time during the day. You have to make that time. And that's the difficult part about that third category. I'll be making some more videos about each of these three categories and sort of how to leverage that. And I'll also be going into a lot of these other discussion points. So we talked about the what of routines, what is a routine, why do we care, who has routines, how should you think about them, and why do we care about routines, how do we get good routines, and when should we have these routines. Hope you got a lot out of this video, or hope you got something at least. And the biggest compliment you can give me and this little project M&M Wad is to share this video with somebody who might get something else out of it. So somebody who might get something out of this video. So pass it along if you can. Maybe like it. Maybe subscribe to the channel. I hope you dig it. Thank you very much.